Welcome to day 3 of our U-Haul road trip from Florida to Alberta. Today we leave the streets of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and head northwest into the wide open landscape that define the American West. We'll cross the entire state, from the rolling plains and farmland of the east through Rapid City, the Black Hills region, past the legendary town of Sturgis, and the geographical center of the United States at Belle Fourche, before skimming the northeast corner of Wyoming. From there, we cut into Montana on Highway 212, tracing a route steeped in both Native American and frontier history, and finally reaching Billings for the night. This is a day of big skies and endless highways where the horizon seems to stretch forever. The culture begins to shift westward, and the scenery slowly transforms from farmland into rugged plains, a first true taste of wide open west. South Dakota greeted us with vast, unbroken stretches of farmland and rolling prairie that seemed to extend endlessly in every direction. The land spread out like a golden green ocean, fields of wheat swaying in the wind, rows of corn rustling like paper, and wide pastures where cattle grazed lazily under the sun. Every few miles, a lone farmhouse, barn, or silo would appear, weathered by time, reminders of generations who worked the soil before us. The highway stretched straight and unbending, carving its way across the prairie like a ruler laid on a map. Fences lined the field, their posts leaning at odd angles, while occasional tree lines broke up the horizon. Out here, traffic was scarce, just the occasional semi rumbling along or a lone pickup heading for the next distant town. It was the kind of road that impresses upon you the sheer immensity of America's interior. Each mile passed almost without notice, and yet the view seemed endless, as though the prairie had no beginning or end. Above it all, the sky felt immensely large, a pale blue dome stretching in every direction, dotted with drifting white clouds whose shadows swept across the plains like it was silent waves, and then the occasional rain shower. Looking out at the horizon, it felt as though you could drive forever and never escape the openness. This was also the land of the homesteaders and the pioneers, people who came west under the promise of the Homestead Act, building lives out of sod houses, wooden shacks, and sheer determination. It was in this very region that Laura Ingalls Wilder, author of the Little House on the Prairie series, spent her childhood in a settler's cabin near DeSmet, South Dakota. Her stories captured what life was like on these prairies in the late 1800s. The long winters, the endless summers, the beauty and the hardship of carving out a home on the frontier. Driving across this landscape today, it wasn't hard to imagine what she saw. The unbroken horizon, the whispering grass, the sense of both isolation and possibility. There's a quiet timelessness in this openness, a reminder that while highways, tractors, and modern farms now dominate, the land itself is much the same as it was a century and a half ago. Passing through it in the U-Haul, we felt small against the sweep of the prairies. Travelers in a land that has always made people earn their place, but rewards them with beauty and freedom unlike anywhere else. Every small town we passed, each silo, grain elevator, and local diner added to the feeling that these lands had been farmed and traveled by generations before us. It's a rhythm you can't see anywhere else in the country. Miles of nothing, punctuated by history and human presence in the vast expanse. As we rolled westward, the flat prairie began to ripple into gentle hills, and before long the skyline of Rapid City rose up against the horizon. The shift felt significant. After miles of wide open plains, this was a true threshold, a place where the character of the land begins to change. Rapid City is often called the gateway to the Black Hills, and it's easy to see why. Just beyond its edge lies some of the most iconic and dramatic landscapes in the American West. To the south and east, the Badland stretches in jagged ridges and eroded canyons, a stark and almost overworldly scene of the stripped rock and spires. To the west, the Black Hills rise suddenly from the prairie, cloaked in dense pine forests and dotted with granite outcroppings that seem to reach towards the sky. Hidden among those peaks is Mount Rushmore, the colossal carving of presidents' faces that has become one of America's most recognizable monuments. Even without leaving the highway, the pull of the region was undeniable. Billboards reminded us that Mount Rushmore was just a short detour away, while roadside shops advertised Black Hills gold and Native American art. The air seemed different too, crisper, cooler, carrying with it the promise of higher ground and wilder country ahead. There's also a deeper sense of history here. The Black Hills have long been sacred land for the Lakota Sioux, central to their culture and spirituality, and the region has seen more than its share of conflict and change as settlers moved west. Rapid City itself grew as a hub for trade, railroads, and tourism, and today it straddles the line between a modern city and a historic crossroads. Driving past, we didn't stop to explore, but even from the cab of the U-Haul, it felt like we were brushing up against something bigger, a place where geology, history, and culture collide at the very doorstep of the West. The road carried us forward, but Rapid City left the impression of a gateway passed through, the threshold crossed on the way to the vastness that still lay ahead. Not long after, we rolled past Sturgis, a town with a reputation that far outweighs its size. At first glance, it looks like any other small South Dakota community. Quiet streets, low-slung buildings, and the Black Hills rising in the distance. But every August, Sturgis transformed into the beating heart of motorcycle culture. For 1 week, the population explodes from just a few thousand to 750,000 as riders from across North America and even overseas descend on the town. The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally is legendary, a gathering that fills the highways with chrome and thunder. Bikers cruise in from every direction, camping in the fields, lining the streets with Harleys and custom choppers, and filling the bars, restaurants, and concert stages. It's more than just a rally, it's a pilgrimage, a celebration of freedom, speed, and the open road. Even when the rally isn't happening, you can feel its presence. Murals of riders decorate the walls. Souvenir shops sell rally gear year-round, and signs proudly advertise Sturgis as the motorcycle capital of the world. Driving through in the U-Haul, the streets were calm, but it was easy to imagine the roar of engines and the endless rows of bikes stretching as far as the eye can see. Passing Sturgis on our long journey north, we couldn't help but think about the symbolism. Here we were, hauling across the continent in a rumbling truck, sharing the same highway that, for 1 week every summer, become the ultimate playground for riders chasing adventure, independence, and the thrill of the open road. Just north of Sturgis lies Belle Fourche, a small town with a big claim to fame. It marks the geographical center of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. A modest monument stands proudly in the town square, surrounded by open fields that stretch farther than the eye can see. Driving past it, you can't help but pause and reflect. The roads, the plains, the horizon, everything seems to emphasize just how vast this country really is. Belle Fourche feels like the heartbeat of America's heartland. The monument itself is simple, yet it represents something profound. The literal middle of a nation that spans oceans, mountains, deserts, and forests. You can almost picture the countless travelers, settlers, explorers who crossed these plains over centuries, tracing paths now mirrored by our modern highway. Stopping, even briefly, gives a moment to stretch, take in the quiet beauty of the northern plains, and appreciate the enormity of the journey so far, from the prairies of South Dakota to the peaks of Montana ahead. This midpoint is a powerful reminder of both the distance we've already covered and the wide open adventure still to come. Belle Fourche isn't just a geographical marker, it's a milestone in the soul of the road. After leaving Belle Fourche, our route clipped the northeast corner of Wyoming, where the open plains stretched endlessly ahead. Not far along, we came across a massive bentonite mine near Colony, a sprawling operation that seemed to stretch to the horizon. Bentonite clay, sometimes called the clay of 1,000 uses, plays a quiet but essential role in industries across the country, from drilling fluids and cat litter, cosmetics, and agriculture. Seeing the sheer scale of the mine from the highway was humbling. Conveyor belts snaked across the land. Massive machinery dwarfed our U-Haul. It's a striking reminder that these remote plains aren't empty. They're full of resources, history, and work that keeps America moving. For a moment, it felt like we were witnessing the intersection of human ingenuity and the natural expanse of the West, where industry rises alongside the endless sky. Even from the truck, the size and activity of the mine was awe-inspiring. It punctuated the long drive with a moment of wonder, a reminder that the American West isn't just beautiful, it's productive, resilient, and endlessly fascinating. As we crossed into Montana, we continued on Highway 212, a road steeped in history. This highway traces lands that were once part of the Great Sioux Nation and later became central to the frontier conflicts of the 19th century. Not long after crossing into Montana, our route carried us through a stretch of the Custer National Forest, a vast expanse of public land that feels like a transition point between the open prairie and the rugged mountain country still to come. Covering over 1.3 million acres, Custer is a patchwork of forested mountains, rolling grasslands, and winding rivers spread across southern Montana and into parts of South Dakota. On Highway 212, you don't see towering peaks like the Rockies just yet, but you do notice the change. The land ripples into pine-dotted hills, rocky ridges, and wide valleys where deer and antelope graze in the tall grass. The forest is named after General George Armstrong Custer, whose infamous defeat at the Battle of Little Bighorn happened not far from here. That history lingers in the land, rivers, hills, and plains that were once the stage for clashes between the U.S. cavalry and the Lakota, Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, Arapaho people. Today, it's a quieter place, but you can almost feel those layers of history as you drive through. For travelers, the Custer National Forest offers a welcome shift from the monotony of the plains. Scenic pullouts, winding stretches of road, and glimpses of wildlife make it feel like you're finally getting into the American West postcard and stories. The scent of pine drifts through the windows and the air feels crisper, cleaner, reminding you that you're climbing slowly, mile by mile, toward higher country. Even in the U-Haul, it was impossible not to appreciate the quiet beauty of this place. The forest felt like a threshold. Behind us, the vast plains of South Dakota and Wyoming. Ahead of us, the rugged landscape that will eventually lead to the Rockies and beyond. Not far from our route lies the Little Bighorn battlefield, where the Lakota and the Cheyenne famously defeated General Custer in 1876, a landmark that reminds travelers of the deep and often turbulent history of these plains. Driving along 212, the landscape seemed to stretch without end. Golden grasslands dotted with low ridges, occasional clusters of trees, and the first hints of Montana's rolling hills and distant peaks. The asphalt ribbon beneath us mirrored the old trails once carved by buffalo and early explorers. Every mile carried a sense of connection to the generations who traveled this land long before paved highways existed. The wide open skies were overwhelming in the best possible way, and the changing light played across the plain as the sun began to dip towards the horizon. Highway 212 isn't just a road, it's a living corridor through time, a journey that threads together history, geography, and the raw beauty of Big Sky country. Traveling it in the quiet of the evening made the miles feel both immense and intimate, a perfect way to transition from the prairies of South Dakota into the rugged promise of Montana. By evening, we finally approached Billings, Montana, leaving the plains of South Dakota behind. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, the wide valleys, the distant ridges rising against the horizon. The sky was painted in deep shades of orange and purple as the sun sank low. The air felt cooler and crisper, a welcome change from the humidity of the Midwest. Long stretches of empty highway rolled beneath the U-Haul tires, giving a sense of freedom and space unlike anything we'd experienced so far. After nearly 700 miles of driving through farmland, hills, historic highways, and the first hints of rugged western terrain, the lights of Billings finally appeared ahead. Pulling into the city felt like a well-earned pause, a chance to rest and prepare for the final push into Canada. Tomorrow is the final stretch of our U-Haul adventure. A long drive from Montana into Alberta. We'll cross the border at Coots Sweetgrass, where the Rockies rise on the horizon and the road carries us north toward Calgary. It's the culmination of 4 days, over 2,400 miles, and 12 states and into one province. An unforgettable journey across the heart of North America. Stay tuned for Day 4, the grand finale of our cross-country adventure.